and welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. Tonight we're going to talk about the rest, we're going to analyze the rest of the Detroit Lions NFL draft picks in 2023, some undrafted free agents, plus a little Tigers and Spartans, but the DeAndre Swift trade. Here, let me. Yep. The Lions have traded running back DeAndre Swift and overall pick 249 defensive tackle Moro Ojomo to the Philadelphia Eagles for overall pick 219 running back Antoine Green and a 2025 fourth round pick. So that's because they got Jahmyr Gibbs in overall pick number 12 in the first round 3 nights ago in Kansas City. So some may miss DeAndre Swift, but I think it's an upgrade.
Absolutely. Just like how it was an upgrade with going from Jamal Williams to David Montgomery, this is an absolute upgrade as well for the running back room in Detroit, because I mentioned it ad nauseum. I've talked about this kid for weeks, probably months it seems, since I saw him go off the way he did against Arkansas. But there was a reason why Jahmyr Gibbs was arguably my favorite player, and like on my entire big board of players, he was right up near the top for this draft, who I would want the Lions to get. And it seems like the only other person in the world that loved Jahmyr Gibbs more than me was Brad Holmes, because if you saw by his reaction, like it's already gone viral, the way he was pounding on the table, like the way he always seems to. But that's like his signature now. Every draft, if he pounds the table for you after making a choice or who he wants to get, I think that lets you know what kind of good player or what kind of player that he knows he's got for his team. Because this is what you get with Jahmyr Gibbs. You get an explosive weapon to add to an offense that was already top 5 last year. Looks to be the same, if not better, this year. And with Gibbs, the fact that he is such an explosive weapon, it's because it comes in a variety of ways. Yes, he has that pure breakaway speed. He runs a sub 4.4 40. Okay, he runs even faster than that, it seems, during the middle of games, just because he's so pumped full of adrenaline. But that's the type of speed he has. It's like a Alvin Kamara type of deal, a Jamal Charles, a Darren Sproles. I even mentioned Isaiah Pacheco, but Alvin Kamara seems to be the most common comparison, which makes sense in a way too, because remember, he was under the eye of Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn back in New Orleans. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Campbell had his input as well in terms of talking to Brad Holmes about, hey, make sure keep an eye on this guy. He may be what we need. And what you get with Jahmyr Gibbs, I already mentioned the speed that makes him a home run threat every single time he even touches the ball. Not just how he runs with his vision on the field and how he hits that hole. With that extra burst of acceleration, but also his pass catching ability out of the backfield. That's what sets him apart, in my opinion, from the most of the other running backs in this class, even more so than Bijan Robinson. Because while Bijan is your typical, what you would think your more every down back, like a Saquon Barkley, so to speak, Gibbs is a far different player. Yes, same position, but the threat that he creates by being that pass catching option out the backfield bodes very well for an offense if you have a quarterback in Jared Goff who is not known for being that deep threat, that deep ball threat down the field, known more for dink and dunk and chunk plays, check downs. That's okay, because if you get into a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs who can make a guy miss in open space, look out. That's lights out for you. So when that pick was made, it was essentially the writing was on the wall right then and there for DeAndre Swift. Even though it was a little bit disappointing to see his tenure come to an end, you saw the glimpses of potential when he was healthy, for one, and two, when he followed his coach's advice instead of running, east and west, sideline to sideline, he went north south. Is the way you want your running backs to go. We saw Deuce Staley try to bring that out of him. We've seen other coaches try to bring that out of him. It just didn't appear to click all the way it wanted to for Detroit. That's not to say that he was a bad player or a bust or anything. It just didn't seem to work out well or mesh well here. So give him a new scenery, put him into an offense that may be able to use him differently than the way that Detroit did. And like Brad Holmes said, it could turn into a win-win, because Philly, the moves that they've made over this draft weekend alone lets me know how obviously much closer they were or they are to Super Bowl contention and title contention what the Lions are. Because let's think about it. They were a defensive stop away from winning their second Super Bowl title in about what 5-6 years. So
Wow.
knowing that they were that close to the doorstep, and knowing of how they were, some would say, a ticky-tack defensive flag away from winning that game, they may feel okay. This is the pieces that we need to put that away. That's why they saw them get Jalen Carter. That's why they got Nolan Smith. You know, and for example, quick note by the way, Taylor, with that 219th pick 219 that was part of that deal to select Antoine Green. He's actually a wide receiver. Wide receiver.
Oh, wide receiver. Thank you very much.
But we'll get to him in a little while. But in terms of the moment that Gibbs was picked, yeah, I figured, that Swift was done for.
All right, thanks. So the Lions actually add a, a, a deep threat to their roster in that DeAndre Swift trade. So they give up what turned out to be a defensive tackle, but I believe they've got plenty of defensive tackles, such as Romeo Okwara, defensive end Aiden Hutchinson, all
Isaiah
those other
Buggs.
guys, James Houston.
Well, those are more the DNs. We're talking about the nose tackles, the three down, the inside trenches guys that tries to plug up the middle to make sure that the running game gets as stopped as possible. Guys like Isaiah Buggs, guys like Ali McNeil, Levi Onsarike. Some instances they'll do rotation. You'll see guys like Kaminsky and Josh Paschal, and even Aiden himself will go interior if need be. But for the most part, that's your plug guys that you need to help stop the run. And which is why, in my opinion, they did a good job in getting Broderick Martin in the third round. I don't know if that was a result of a couple of deals that they made, trades, whatever, but this was one of the guys I think they felt could be a death piece for sure on that D line, but particularly someone that with the size of him. This guy is 6'5", 330 pounds. That's just pure clogging mass of a human being. You can put him, have him sap up and draw attention away from all the other blockers. And that's what? Going to free up your linebackers, free up your second level defenders, guys that can pursue, cover efficiently, and make the right tackles to for example, stop the run, which was a massive, I would say, the biggest weakness for this team, at least on the defensive side of the ball, was stopping the run. So I think between getting Broderick Martin and another player that we'll talk about in a second, and Jack Campbell, that was one step they took in terms towards fixing that problem with their defense.
Yep, they did. And then the rest of the Lions draft picks. Tight end Sam Laporta in the second round at 34th overall. Cornerback Brian Branch in the second round at 45th overall. Brian Branch looks like a really elite cornerback in college. Quarterback Hendon Hooker in the third round at 68 in a trade from the Denver Broncos. Hendon Hooker is probably going to be a backup quarterback. I heard he was the future quarterback after Jared Goff. Defensive tackle Broderick Martin from Western Kentucky in the third round at 96 overall in a trade with the Arizona Cardinals.
So that was a trade, okay.
Yep. Offensive tackle Kobe Sorsdal from William and Mary in round 5 at 152 overall. And then, of course, as I mentioned, wide receiver Antoine Green in the 7th round at 219.
Now, in terms of breaking down these picks, I would have to feel remiss if I didn't at least go back to the second first round pick that they made at pick number 18. I talked about them too a little bit, but not as much as I want to right now. And that's Jack Campbell, linebacker from Iowa, who, by the way, was Sam Laporta's teammate. I believe it might have been a co-captain with him last year, or at least one of the co-captains last year for the Hawkeyes. Basically, what I can say about Jack Campbell is this. He's an old school linebacker. He's the kind of guy you would probably liken into, say, like a Brian Urlacher type of mold, or I would say maybe even a Luke Kuechly type of player. That's the comparison. That's the ceiling that I've seen some people make for him. If he reaches those marks, solid. At the very least, you still can get a solid, an anchor piece like Brad Holmes was talking about. This guy, they feel he can be an anchor for their defense for the next several years. He can cover. He has deceptional athleticism. He knows how to read quarterbacks, knows how to read the play. Um, in terms of what he brings to the field, I heard some people mention, when this book came in, oh, this is a Dan Campbell type of play. This is a Dan Campbell pick. Maybe, but this also feels like a Chris Spielman pick because that's the type of player that Chris Spielman was. And I think if you're gonna shore up a weakness on the defensive side of the ball, which we know the Lions didn't have too much, had some problems with the linebacking core last year, the fact that a 6th-round rookie and Malcolm Rodriguez was initially picked for special teams purposes, eventually became one of your starters at linebacker. While that's a good testament to him, how good Rodrigo is, it's also a testament to how bad your linebacker core was. So give credit to guys like Alex Anzalone. He made essential plays, the tackles, was a defensive leader for them. He earned his contract, but you still got to get better at that spot. And to me, if you're going to get a player like this, who's, yes, he's a linebacker, but he's a linebacker that can cover. He's a linebacker that can be an absolute thumper of a tackler. He can hit dudes, but also wrap you up and make sure you don't get started, which is going to be key and essential to stopping the run. Which, by the way, I have to mention, quick dissension, digress back into Gibbs. It seems like with the makeup of what this team wants to do and wants to get better at doing is running the ball. Now, they did a great job of running the ball last year. Best offensive line in the NFC North. Jamal Williams had over 1,000 yards rushing. When Swift was healthy, you saw what he brought to the table. But they want to be evolving to that next step, that next tier of a running team to where you want to salt away games. You want to go on long 4, 5, 6 minute drives that keeps your defense fresh on the sidelines. You want to, move the chains and milk clock down late in games to help salt away things and close it down, because the Lions did have some trouble closing games last year, primarily that Minnesota game, to where if they had gotten just a couple first downs or so, that would have wrapped them up. So that's a lesson that they have to learn, and I think might have played a factor into some of the decisions they made with the draft. So it's simple. It's simple football philosophy, in my opinion. Run the ball, stop the run. You got a guy
defend the pass.
Yeah, but when you can run the ball, you control the clock, and when you stop the run, you essentially force your opponent into a one-dimensional offense, which allows your defense to do what they have to do best. So to me, it all comes down to what you do between the trenches and when how you be physical up front running the ball. So getting that with with Jack Campbell was a great pick. And also, I mentioned before, he's a captain, he's a leader. Kirk Ferentz got emotional multiple times throughout the course of his last year talking about Jack Campbell. So I believe he impressed very well with the Lions in terms of his interview, his top 30 visit and interview, to the point where, this was a guy on their board that no matter what, if they saw him, they were going to get him. And I'll say this, people will be thinking about, oh, they made a reach. They shouldn't have done this. How do you draft a running back in the first round? I'll say this, I'd rather reach and get the guy that I know I want and I know I need for this team. I'd rather reach and get him now than rather wait around, hope he falls to me. And by the time it's my turn to pick, he's already gone. So I got no problem with how the line or how Brad Holmes did it. And when you look at how the other picks that he made, and we'll get to them, and I'll get to them a little bit. Sam Laporta, tight end. This is a guy who, along with Michael Mayer, was seen as one of the top tight end prospects in the entire draft. You got him at the start of the second round. This guy is a yak. He's a yak machine, yards after catch, as in you give him the ball, get him in open space, he can be a dangerous weapon for you. And we saw how effective that proved to be for the Lions. Don't forget about that play against the Jets on 4th down, that big touchdown by Brock Wright. Those type of plays can be absolutely beneficial for a guy like Sam Laporta. And frankly, between the guys I just mentioned and another guy I'm going to mention shortly or two, you could easily pencil in as a potential day one player, day one starter for sure. I see that in Gibbs. I see that in Campbell. I can potentially see that in Sam Laporta because how he plays. Yes, he's a little bit on the small side. He's not your big physical dude, but I would say he's got a little bit of George Kittle in him, the way he shows grit and temerity on that field. And like I said, with the guys that you already have, Brock Wright, James Mitchell, Shane Silstra, you add more tight end depth and also build a potential future long term starter. But with enough tight ends, you can also bolster that line, that run heavy line, or actually on run heavy plays, you can bolster that extra layer of protection to give your running backs more holes and more open space to run. So it's all strategy here, all strategy here. And with Brian Branch, my goodness, you got probably the best safety, one of the best corners in this whole draft. I know they probably would have wanted Devin Witherspoon, but you know what? Credit to Seattle because they took him right at number 5, right before us. I have a feeling that if Devin Witherspoon was on the table, was on the board at 6, the Lions very well could have taken him, and probably still would have found a way to at least make a deal, make a trade, and still take Jahmyr Gibbs. But because that's how much they value Gibbs, they still would have considered. I've heard someone say, they probably would have taken him at 6 if need be. But I think that was probably it's on the fact that they saw what was best for them. They decided to trade down after Devin Witherspoon got taken off the board. But with Brian Branch, though, you get another top-notch, versatile corner safety. He can do both, mainly nickel, but you can move him all over the field. You can plug him just about any spot. And with Aaron Glenn, with a guy who knows with his scheme, he likes to play man coverage instead of zone. That could work to his benefit when you have a guy like Brian Branch, along with the other guys and other additions you made in free agency to the cornerback depth specifically. You can do that as well. And let's not forget about the fact this is a potential long-term insurance deal because we don't know if we're going to bring back either Emmanuel Mosley or C.J. Gardner-Johnson next year because they're both on one-year deals. The only corner deal that we made this offseason that has a multi-year deal is Cam Sutton. He's got 3 years. So we needed to add another guy in there long-term that we had controllable years for. And why not get a guy in Brian Branch who is one of the top, if not near the top, at his position in this class. And I'll be honest, I'm glad they picked him there because I have a sneaky feeling if they hadn't, New England would have gotten him with the next pick at 46. Because let's face it, they already got Christian Gonzalez in the first round. You mean to tell me Bill Belichick wouldn't have salivated at the chance to get Brian Branch, knowing he's coming from a Nick Saban defense? Oh, genius move by Brad Holmes to make that deal with the Packers and snatch Branch before Belichick got his chance on him. Now, Hendon Hooker, this was another pick that had me immensely satisfied because Taylor, other than Jahmyr Gibbs, I had mentioned to you months before during the course of the college football season, I would not have minded if the Lions had thought about a chance or taking a chance on Hendon Hooker. Yes, I'm aware of his age. Yes, I'll know that he'll be 30 when his rookie deal ends. And yes, I know he's coming off of an ACL injury. Well, let's not forget that this man was the front runner for the Heisman Trophy at one point. Let's not forget what this man did to Alabama. And yes, that was Alabama with Brian Branch and all that. Okay, let's not forget what he did throughout the course of the season before he got hurt. Okay?
Yeah, Tennessee upset Alabama in that game.
Exactly. Tennessee was on a poise to make a run towards the college football playoff.
In a slugfest.
Before Hooker got hurt. So with Hooker, you get a guy who has tremendous deep ball accuracy, great poise in the pocket, athleticism clearly, where you can use him in any type of playbook or play call. You want to do some RPO, you can do that. Or run the option with them, especially with Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield. Well, you can definitely do that. But also with this move, you address the lack of QB depth or backup QB depth that you had. Because let's face it, going out there with just Jared Goff and Nate Sudfeld this year again ain't going to cut it, especially if, God forbid, Goff got hurt again. So you make this deal with Hooker. You let him rehab. You get his rehab out the way, let him make his progression, make his development, his recovery. And then the next year or so, obviously, let him prove to be a more than capable backup for you. And if it comes down to that decision as to whether you want to pay Jared Goff $45-50 million or just take a chance on Hendon Hooker for a couple of years as your starter, you can do that. That's the option that you presented yourself by making this type of selection. So no problem with that whatsoever. I felt they desperately needed to address the quarterback question in a big way, whether it be through free agency or the draft or whatever, and they did that. I wouldn't have been upset if they had gotten, let's say, a Teddy Bridgewater for a 1 or 2 year deal. But this was, in my opinion, the much better option. And the fact that Hooker was still there for them, and knowing that he did have a visit with them as well. He wasn't the only quarterback that visited with him. Okay, I know everyone talk about C.J. Stroud, but Hooker visited with the Lions too. That was for a reason, and now they got him.
Yep, they got him all right. Broderick Martin from Western Kentucky. So I think we already talked about it.
Yeah, we already talked about Broderick. I can mention about Kobe Sorsdal. With Sorsdal, culture fit, and also just a big boy you need for that offensive line. You can never have enough big uglies. And knowing how potentially you could be needing an emergency or a substitution or a practice field signing or whatever the case may be, you're going to need as much bodies available throughout the course of the season.
Protection.
Get as much as you can. That's why they brought back Graham Glasgow, for example. And for Antoine Green, he's 6'3". He gives you size, but he also gives you speed and a vertical presence down the field. Reminds me a little bit of how sometimes Goff would look towards DJ Chark on the deep balls. DJ Chark is no longer there anymore, and not to mention, in addition to the Jameson Williams suspension, they had to release Quintez Cephas. And they had to release another safety as well because it turned out his suspension was the same level as Cephas. His name escapes me at the moment. So that's probably another reason why they had to get Branch as well. Depth, just depth also, but also future starter. But in terms of that, and we'll get to the undrafted free agents a little bit, this was an example of the Lions getting guys that they know can start and play for them right now, if not start and play for them in the next 2 years or so. This is guys that can help you. They felt they could help them win now and win in the future as well, because they've said it before. They're going to go for a division title this year. They're aiming to win the division. They're being favored by many people to win the North, and that was before Aaron Rodgers left. Now that pressure has upped more, and now you see the expectations rise. So with the moves they made, the deals that they made, and the players they picked, I'm not surprised.
All right, so I'm still trying to pull this up, but I
have the list. I have the list of UDFA's if you need it.
Yeah. They're right here. I was just trying to find the name of the safety that was suspended indefinitely and then cut, along with Quintez Cephas.
Correct.
But
while you did that,
Baylor offensive. Yep. Go ahead.
I was going to say you can look for his name. I'll just go through these UDFA's if you want, real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Well, let's start with Adrian Martinez, quarterback that he got from Kansas State. I believe he went there after he played at Nebraska, probably grad transferred from Nebraska to Kansas State. But it's a guy that gives you more potential QB depth in that, like a break glass in case of emergency type of deal, practice squad deal, whatever the case. But he's also mobile. So that could be a situation where you want to have him to learn certain plays in the playbook, same way along with Hendon Hooker as well, of how I utilize him compared to how you may utilize Jared Goff. I can see that happening. By the way, I forgot to mention, probably the only other person that was happy that the Lions got Jahmyr Gibbs was Ben Johnson. And he's probably even happier, too, that they got Sam Laporta, too, because with the capabilities and the strengths that I've already mentioned, of what they bring to the table offensively and how it fits the scheme and the culture and whatever type of mad scientist playbook that runs through Ben Johnson's mind, using play action, using dink and dunk plays, check downs, chunk plays, play action that uses Jared Goff to the best of his abilities.
CJ Moore.
Thank you. Those are the type of players that will make Ben Johnson salivate, but also probably consider the fact that, do you really want to leave and go to another team after next season, knowing the weapons that we have at your disposal here? But yeah, CJ Moore, thank you for mentioning him as well. That's probably another reason why they had to get Branch as well. But moving on from that, going back to the UDFA's, I mentioned Adrian Martinez. Another guy, Mohamed Ibrahim, running back from Minnesota. He was the 2-time All Big Ten first team, I believe. During his time with the Gophers at the running back spot, he became the leading rusher in Golden Gopher school history, And he's just known, when we look at his size and just how he runs in general, he's just like this big bowling ball, so to speak. It's like a physical power back. Probably similar along the lines to a David Montgomery, but not probably as well as known for catching passes out the backfield, to be that dual threats, that two-way running back supposedly. But still, very key player to have as long as he's healthy for your running back room. Chase Cota, wide out from Oregon. I mentioned him. I would mention him along the same lines as Antoine Green. He can give you size, be a size threat for you in vertical situations down the field. And by the way, more wide out depth while you're dealing with the effects of releasing Cephas and suspending JMO. Other players, you can go along the lines. It's not necessary to get the full details about them, but Keaton Thompson, wide out from Virginia. Connor Galvin, offensive tackle from Baylor. Ryan Swoboda, offensive lineman from UCF. Brad Cecil, guard and center from USF. Again, you've noticed the positions I've been naming off. More big boys. You need big boys for your trenches. And they continue that right here with Zach Moton, excuse me.
Keep going.
Edge rusher from Akron. They did get another tackle, a nose tackle, D tackle, Chris Smith from Notre Dame. They even got his teammate, Brandon Joseph, who's also another safety. So let's think about this cornerback room, right? We already mentioned Sutton, Mosley, CJ Chiche. I mentioned Brian Branch. Let's not forget that Tracy Walker's coming back from his injury, right? And you have Will Harris, Jerry Jacobs. I'm probably missing a couple other players. Of course, can't forget about Kirby Joseph. And maybe, on the rare chance that we see him too, Ife Melifonwu. I think that's pretty much all the cornerbacks in secondary that I can remember mentioning. But you can tell just on paper alone, far better than what we had to deal with and what was at our disposal last year. So between that and you added another cornerback in Starling Thomas from UAB, you got yourself another linebacker from Illinois, and Isaac Darkangelo. Now, I'm not sure if he was a grad transfer there or if he did play with Kirby Joseph a couple years back, but he was teammates at the very least with Devin Witherspoon last year. So in terms of the list, makes sense of guys that they needed for either practice squad purposes, depth purposes, or break glass in case of emergency purposes.
Man, yeah, a ton of guys there everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep. So those are your long list of draft picks and undrafted free agents the Lions have picked up. So anybody have any thoughts on these? Whoever's watching, just leave us a comment.
Hey, I've given my thoughts about it. I think this was as solid a draft as you can have. I've long had my trust etched in Brad Holmes. And while, it's at least fair to not agree with every pick he makes, but I think he's shown you that capability that you can trust in him, that more often than not, he will make the right pick. Yeah, sometimes it requires a little bit of luck, like a Penei Sewell falling to them, or the Jags not, passing on Aiden Hutchinson. But sometimes when you get guys in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth round, like a Kirby Joseph, like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, like a Malcolm Rodriguez, or if you somehow make deals to get guys like a Brian Branch before the Patriots could get him, to me, that shows the trust is validated, and I can't wait to see what else he's going to do. Because let's not forget, while Les Snead may get the credit, Brad Holmes was really the guy, the brains behind the operation in terms of scouting and figuring out which players to go after when he was with the Rams. He's brought that same philosophy here to Detroit, and you're seeing it pay dividends already. Because remember when he mentioned about, for example, when he got Todd Gurley, that was an example of him not really caring so much about positional value and all that. He's getting guys that are football players that can help his team win football games. And when you have that type of philosophy, you saw what happened. For example, Jared Goff, when he got an adequate support with the running game, and obviously great help from his defense, you saw what happened. Now you're trying to recreate a little bit that same magic here in Detroit, but probably on a little bit on the opposite end of things. You're getting him all the offensive advantages and weapons that you could possibly think of, while also making sure that your defense is not left far behind. They were a bottom 10 defense last year for good reason. Can you bump that up to maybe middle of the pack, top 15, so to speak? You do that, while maintaining your top 5 offense, without question, you'll get to the playoffs and you'll probably be hosting a playoff game.
Yeah, at least get to a playoff game, maybe win one at least.
Yeah, that's my ceiling. That's like one of my 2 or 3 goals that I've had for the Lions this year.
Mine
Win
as
10
well.
games, win 10 games, get to the playoffs by any means necessary,
10
because
plus.
I understand. Even if you somehow win 10 or 11 games, there's still a chance you may not even win your division. It's rare, but it's always possible. So I'd say even if it's a wild card, get to the playoffs no matter what. And then the third one would be win a playoff game. I would love it if it's at home, but I don't care. Just win a damn playoff game. That's my 3 goals. Win 10 games, get to the playoffs, win a playoff game. If you accomplish at least 2 of those feats, the sky is the limit in terms of what I can expect for this team to, honestly, yes, possibly compete for the big one in the very near future. But again, that takes time. You still got to get there. You still
And teamwork and hard work, harder work, smarter work as well.
Exactly.
All those elements.
For sure.
So, Tigers still in third place, 10-17. They only took one of those 4 against those Baltimore Orioles, who are no joke whatsoever. They are like 19-9. The Orioles are. Wow. In the AL Beast. The AL Beast.
Yeah, they've won 6 series in a row, and when you're doing that in a division as loaded as that, that's impressive. So I can't really have too many qualms about the Tigers losing to a team like that, other than you wish to see more better things. You don't want to see the offense reach the near historic lows from terms of simple and advanced metrics to on base to OPS and all that. It was getting dangerously close there in the first couple of weeks or so of the season. They balanced it up. They brought it up a little bit, but it's still noticeably bad, very much so. When you're leading, player in both home runs and RBIs, yeah, it's Nick Maton. He's hit 4 home runs. Maton, thank you. When you're leading home run hitter and RBI getter is also the same guy that's hitting below 200, hitting below the Mendoza line, that's a problem. But
Yeah.
I can at least say, Matt Vierling is hitting better. He's hitting he's been hitting near 500 this past week or so. And I can say that that Erod Rodriguez, he continues to be the ace of the rotation.
Yep. Or at least the best starting pitcher on the team.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing.
Bullpen's been up and down, but again, what can you expect? It's not. We weren't expecting the pitching to be world beaters, but at least you want to see something more from your offense, at least.
Matt Boyd continues to be Matt Boyd, giving up 4 runs in game 2 of the doubleheader, and taking another loss. So, yeah, not much improvement from him either. Oh boy. So, not much. Yeah, that's about it for Tigers. And then another quick mention: three Michigan State Spartans football players, quarterback Peyton Thorne, wide receiver Keon Coleman, and cornerback Charles Brantley have all entered the NCAA transfer portal. So the Spartans lose 3 key players.
Yeah, that's 3 starters from their team last year. Granted, they went
Key
5
stars.
they went 5-7. But when you lose your starting corner, your starting quarterback, and your first string wide receiver, that's bad, really bad. We'll get more into depth with it if need be next week, but I'll just say this: Mel Tucker, he's been living by the portal. Most notable example was Kenneth Walker. That you might argue and say that Kenneth Walker is the sole reason he's got that fat.
Wasn't he drafted?
Yeah, but let's be honest. Based on what that 11-win season in 2021, which was on the back of Kenneth Walker III, or Kenneth Walker IV, excuse me. That's why Tuck got that 10-year, $95 million contract. And so far, hasn't been living up to that end of the bill. Now,
Not enough.
I'm not going to say, fire him or anything, but this heat should be, at the very least, warm. And if he has another bad year, it's going to get very, very hot.
Yeah, like almost
you live by the portal, you die by the portal. That's why you always want to try. You always want to try to make sure you have your other bases set up in terms of recruiting. You know, not
Yeah.
to toot my horn, but you saw what Michigan's doing.
Yeah, of course.
They've been finding that balance between recruiting and transfer portal.
Yeah. Yeah. As a head coach, there may come a time where you have to step out of the portal, step out of your comfort zone if you're a head coach like Mel Tucker. So
Yeah, I mean, you can't just be lighting cigars and showing and bringing dogs to the stadium and chopping on the sidelines. What's that going to do for you when you're facing Michigan and Ohio State?
you got to develop your players on your roster. Give them more time. Give them development.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Don't just take them for granted.
Easier said than done sometimes, especially if you're not taking control of with your staff too, because that was a problem that plagued them last year too. So
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, smoke all the cigars, and
Just
do all
like
the memes.
Just like
Yeah.
Mark D'Antonio, just like John L. Smith. Wow, because he delegated too much power to his assistant coaches, and they fell apart in the mid 2000s. Think about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, those are all the topics that we've discussed on the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_truth. Like its Facebook page and subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. Also on my Twitch at DT2Phillips1984. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at DT2Phillips, and follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch at EdSmith313. Also, special shout-outs go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward in Ferndale, Baldwin Family Healthcare of Cadillac, Cadillac Nutrition. Download the Engage app to place an order for a beverage or a shake. Cali Tickets, Mark Goldman, a former sponsor of the Detroit Sports Rag, 877-225-8425, or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth podcast logo on my shirts. Cuts by Melanie in Lake City for my haircuts. An old high school friend of mine. Ito Ramen House in Royal Oak, rated Detroit's best Japanese restaurant for consecutive years. 248-556-5775. ItoRamenHouse.com. At Ito Ramen House on Instagram. Delicious sushi and Filipino food. Impact north of Ortonville, same as Cadillac Nutrition. Energy teas, protein shakes and whatnot. Let's roll the rolled ice cream in Cadillac, now branded with the Food Mafia. Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac, 231-884-8195, and on Facebook, the Red Ox Tavern in Auburn Hills, Samaritas Senior Living in Cadillac, United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan, where Jim Lyons works, and Yen Yoga and Fitness in Traverse City. Stay tuned for True Sports later tonight at 11 with myself and Louis Tenor. But join us back here next week, or later this week, or something like that, for another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. Till then, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. Remember, the truth happens because the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power the people. Hit them with a high, and we close our case.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.